Good afternoon. So let's talk a little bit about Big Country Boxing. Okay, it's been out a few days. I have personally, I was lucky enough to be playtesting this for a long time. Then it went on the shelf for a long time. And then the last couple of weeks playtesting it and enjoying it and refining it and fine tuning it. And then obviously in the last few days since releasing it. So a lot of things happen to me when I finish a game. I either I'm either fed up with it and it's done and I just kind of want to put it out there and I don't really want to see it for a while. Or like this one, I couldn't wait when it was done to just chill and play it, just enjoy it. And that's what I've been doing. Okay. But I had a couple of questions and I thought I would talk about this. So and this is one of the things I've been discussing with Chris, because Chris, of course, and I have a little partnership in which you're going to be able to, if you want to, have your boxers professionally carded, you can always go to Chris and say, hey, I want to have these and submit your ratings and your boxes and say, hey, dude, I have a top 10 from my career. I really want to have carded for prosperity or just to have them or whatever. Or if your boxers or if you make historic box, whatever, Chris will be able to do that and he'll be able to do that for whatever he charges per card, 65 cents a card. But more importantly, uh, his quick game boxing that he's working on will be totally compatible with my game. So I've licensed him to not only, in a way, I've said, please feel free to make these boxers for me, but if other people want to do this, could you do this? He said, of course. And then I basically said, and I gave him in a way, the freedom to make a version of this that is not based on the career game, the fictional world and fictional boxing career game, but better a quick play boxing game. And he's going to be able to rate thousands of real boxers, and I mean thousands. So you will be able to go over there and order the 1950s lightweights and welterweights and whatever, and get whatever number of boxers might be in that set or something. And those will be compatible with Big Country Boxing, or they'll be compatible with my free quick fight chart. I mean the pro scoring chart, or with his quick game boxing. So his boxing game will feature slightly different boxing charts, but the rating system will be the same. So you'll be able to use your career boxers with his charts, or you're going to be able to use his boxers with these charts. So it's a great partnership in that you're going to be able to help. You could start a career using real boxers, right? Okay. Not yet done, but it's coming. At least I hope so. I think Chris is a busy man, very busy man. So he'll get to that when he can get to that. However, he'll fill orders if people write and say, hey, could I have these 15 great boxers made? Chris will oblige, right? It just might take him a month. Right. Okay. It's not what this video is about, but I just want people to know that there's really going to be two boxing games out there that will be compatible with boxers that you create or boxers that are in your world or your career in this, but also real boxers, historic boxers that will be completely compatible with his game or this game. And that's kind of cool. It's kind of cool thing. There's going to be two boxing games out there that use the exact same rating system, but it'll be slightly different in how they do their boxing charts, right? That's kind of a cool deal. If it turns out you really like his quick play boxing charts, you can use those charts for this career game, right? Or vice versa. You just want all those great historic boxers, but you like this chart, right? Okay. So I'm rambling on here, but I just think it's so cool, right? So cool. I don't get any money from anything Chris produces, and Chris gets paid for whatever Chris does, and I only get paid if people buy my game, right? So understand that I get nothing from whatever Chris does. The goal there is to give resources to customers, right? If they want to get beautiful cards and all kinds of boxers, that's what he does. I don't have the means to produce beautiful cards. I don't have the time or the means. I don't have the business to do it. But I really wanted people who love Big Country Boxing to be able to get their boxers made or go get thousands of boxers, hundreds of boxers, if they so want to in the future. It's a great resource. So That's the thinking behind it. I want people to know that. But so what I wanted to talk about was Big Country Boxing and the gist of it. So I haven't really. So originally years ago when I sat down to make a circuit game, a professional career circuit combat game, it was going to be a pro wrestling game. I had two problems. I did not watch pro wrestling growing up, and I don't watch pro wrestling now. I have never been a pro wrestling fan. I don't dislike wrestling. It's just something that has quite literally gone beyond me my entire life. But I've loved tabletop wrestling games. There's something, they're so much fun. So I always wanted to make a pro wrestling game that had a career mode. But I wanted, again, the wrestling to be simple die roll, right? Something that matched up and made it interesting. And there was some strategy, etc. But the strategy would be in the die roll, not in what you do. The problem was I could never make a satisfying simple die roll chart that made me feel like the wrestling had any depth or had any meaning. So the idea for this idea of a career combat game sat for a long time. Then, inspired by the movie and my passion for boxing, the people who know me know I have two passions: boxing and football. Boxing was my favorite as a child. Football quickly, once I began to play sport, football became the dominant thing in my life because I could play football. And once you begin to play a sport, it becomes more important to you. So boxing, I loved as a kid, and I still love. It's still probably my favorite sport, but football became the dominant thing in my life as a kid because I was playing football, right? Okay. And it became really accessible. It's on every weekend, Saturday, Sunday, through the fall and the winter, and it becomes part of your life. Boxing, on the other hand, once it went to pay-per-view and cable and Showtime and HBO, boxing became less accessible to good boxing became less accessible to a 14-year-old kid that had to pay $80 for an HBO, fight, and if I couldn't talk my dad into forking up the dough to get an HBO fight, then we weren't going to be able to see Tyson and Buster Douglas go at it, right? Okay. So that meant negotiating with Pops to order the fight, right? Okay. Sometimes it was a hard negotiation, sometimes easy negotiation, right? Okay. All right, here's the deal. So knowing that, the only thing I had not done was flesh out the world. I just knew I wanted to have a career wrestling system where the ratings change and wrestlers accumulate records and you can have stars, et cetera, et cetera. But again, I couldn't come up with an actual satisfying combat chart, a chart that made the fast combats satisfying. So it went on the shelf. The movie setup reminded me, again, that I wanted a fictional world, post-America, World War II, fictional cities. And then I said, I'm going to go and I'm going to do what I know best. I know boxing and I know football really well, and I'm going to make a boxing game. And it was much easier to create a boxing chart that creates the ebb and flow of a fight over rounds, but with those flash knockouts, those TKOs, and boom. All I had to do then was fine tune the chart, the math, get the abstract ratings where they really function, and then create the game portion, which is the difficulty portion. How hard is it to create a random fighter and to navigate through these charts randomly or even as a manager and get them to the championship? It is going to be hard. All right. And I want it hard. That doesn't mean there won't be those guys who roll up a great fighter and he just seems to march his way straight to the title. Fantastic. But it's going to be one of these things where you could play infinite careers and always have something different, right? Okay. Now, so I had a couple of questions, and I thought, it's really they're important to me. I've rambled on here and wasted your time, but I'm really trying to get to a point. So the goal of BCB is that no rating ever is the same. Every single thing you do affects your rating up and down, and every effect is permanent. So +5 at home pre-bout goes up 5 points. I have to check. I have to check a camp. I might have control of whether I'm in the basic camp, which is free ratings to my character, or if I'm forced to do a tough camp, which is going to cost some ratings for my character. So the camp can be, if you're rolling everything randomly, it can be incredibly difficult with an early fighter. And that's just the way it's going to be. But the point is, two things occur to your boxer pre-fight: home or away. Home always drains your assets. Remember, your rating, the boxer rating, is their talent. It's their it's their entourage, it's their fatigue, it's their coaches, it's their demeanor. The rating reflects really the entire thing around the boxer. That's why any travel and all travel is minus 25. I don't care how far you're going. And the reason I don't define the travel at different rates is that I didn't do a map. So if I had created a map and I said every boxer is from here, you could then have different distances, maybe take more wear and tear on your boxer's travel, right? But I thought I just want all travel to be a basic hit. It's when you're a 1300 level boxer and you're on the road, well, it's a 25 hit, nobody's comfortable on the road. Nobody is going to be at their best when they travel, when they're staying in a hotel, when they're surrounded by the press, the media. And of course, this is the 40s, so that wouldn't be a deal. But you're not at home. You're not in your comfort environment. You're not going to get up and do your normal routines, etc. So I wanted travel just to always be a thing you have to deal with. And then being at home is just plus 5. So you're not going to get a big bonus for being at home, but you're home. You're a hometown guy. You're going to just coming out of the locker room, you're going to get pumped by locals. Unless you're a loser, then the locals are going to throw, you know, cans and popcorn and tomatoes at you and stuff, right? If you're the lovable local loser, who's a bum. Yeah. But I don't reflect whether you're a bum or not in the game. It's reflected really in your rating. If you're 200 out of a possible 1,000, you're a bum. We don't need to reflect it anymore. So yes, pre-bout, always, you're either going to immediately take 25 off as you travel, and then you're going to check your camp, and then you're going to affect the rating again there before you go into the fight. That rating is permanent. We're ready to go. We're going to roll. Then the next permanent change to your fighter is going to be the results of the fight. You're either going to win the fight, you're going to lose the fight. You're going to win by points or lose by points. You're going to win by TKO, lose by TKO. You're going to win by knockout. You're going to lose by knockout. Or it's going to be a draw in which both guys suffer. But the minute the fight's over, somebody's rating is going to go up, somebody's rating is going to go down, and that's permanent. We go to the very next. So you could see how getting on a losing streak as a boxer is going to slowly ebb your rating to the point where it could be a death spiral, right? And that's where you have to weigh whether your boxer just isn't cutting it. He just isn't cutting it, whether it's head damage or he just doesn't have the guts or he's just been exposed and he's not improving. This is whatever narrative you choose to explain why your fighter is rolling or why your fighter is in the hole, right? Or why you retire a fighter or why you replace a fighter, retain a fighter, or release a fighter, right? Remember, as a manager, you have 4 decisions every contract. As a boxer, you have 1: keep fighting or quit. Those are your only 2 options as a boxer. If you're a manager, you got 4 choices to do with a boxer. Okay, and there's 2 ways to play the game, right? If you're doing it rules as written, you can mix it up a little bit. I mean, I'm not here to tell you as a boxer you can't, make a couple of tough decisions without rolling dice because you like to maybe prolong them a little bit. You can fudge a little bit, cheat a little bit. I don't. I like finding out. I like playing to find out. Okay, so that's important. Same thing here. I think I talk about this in my making. So on the when you create a boxer, what matters is the random roll and the number that modifies your base rating. So it doesn't matter what the actual descriptor is. You can make it whatever, you can make it unique. So when I roll 3, it's poor accuracy, minus 125. What matters is the minus 125. So I'm going to take that off my score. But I could give that punch type something other than poor accuracy. I could call it low work rate, or I could call it one-dimensional puncher. Or I don't know. I could come up with any descriptor I want that helps flesh out what this boxer looks like. So after a while, you may get to a point where you're like, I'm seeing too much the same descriptors with my fighters. You might want to tweak all of this information and really kind of draw a picture as to what so your boxer is just going to be an abstract number. But this is what keeps hopefully your head in the narrative, in the idea of what things must look like when this guy's in the ring, right? Or why he's losing, or why he's winning, right? So, for instance, Brute minus 25. Well, Brute could also just be I'm trying to think of something else. Brawler, right? You could just say, well, he's a brawler. He just gets in there and throws punches, right? I love Rocky Marciano. I've talked openly on this channel how I think he should be considered the greatest of all time. Man retired undefeated. He did things that no one has ever done, certainly at the heavyweight rank. But when you watch old clips, they can be impressive, but they can also be kind of like, dude, this guy just put his head down sometimes and just welled on. And you're thinking, I don't know if that would fly against some boxers, right? You put your head down and you well on a dude. Yeah. So I've seen some clips of Rocky head down, just wailing on guys. So, so it is what it is. Okay. So just again, clarifying some things. Then you roll to see where you're from, and then that permanently affects again that rating. Remember, you can eventually outgrow so at the beginning you may start with a boxer that's 200 points. Unfortunately, you may start with a boxer that's 1200 points. Your rating will immediately change, and the very first thing that happens, you're going to get +5 for being at home in the first 5 fights. So you're going to get +5 for the first fight. You don't know what the base camp's going to do, the basic camp, and I don't recommend anybody do the other camps if you can help it when you're a burgeoning fighter, because you're going to lose 75 on a substantial camp before you even have a chance to get better, right? And imagine if I take a 75-point hit and I have a 600 boxer and I'm going to be at home +5, so 605, but then a 75 hit, and then I roll illness, and that's a 25, so that's 100 points my boxer loses right there. So, and it matters, right? The substantial camp, you think, well, if you're in a substantial camp, shouldn't that always be a bonus? Hell no. I mean, it's wear and tear, it's constant work, it is discipline. You may come in overtrained, and I was a professional fitness trainer for 20 years. We had to watch with our clients overtraining. Overtraining was as dramatically bad for somebody as being unfit. So being fit is bad, but being overtrained and where your body's breaking down and you're exhausted, both emotionally, mentally, and physically, it takes a great toll on your training. And if you're an athlete and if you don't watch the ebbs and flows of overtraining, they hit their peak 2 weeks before the marathon, and by the time they get to the marathon, they've still been training. They're already declining by the time they're ready for the marathon. So one of my jobs is to make sure with clients that we don't overtrain. They don't hit their peak and then overtrain, and then they're starting to break down before they even get in the ring or before they run or whatever, right? So substantial camp, the goal there is you're going to pay the price. I remember the rating represents everything from their entourage, their coaches. So substantial camp costs you. It's just instead of us having two variables, I don't have a money variable and a rating variable. I have one variable, and that variable reflects everything about your fighter, everything. So it costs you 75 points of your rating. You can see that as money invested in coaches, sparring partners. I don't care how you want to look at that 75 points. You can look at it as your body, the wear and tear on your body physically. It doesn't make any difference to me, right? But then you can hit best shape of your life. That's a +325. That's why you want to do substantial training. You might, with that 16% chance, land 300 points. That's why you would gamble it, right? And if you're already a good fighter up at 1,200 points, you can risk that 75 for a shot of being a 1,500-point fighter. Okay, so that's how that works. Okay, and then the first 5 fights again are always going to be this lovable group of guys. If you play the game rules as written, you can always rename these guys, by the way. And I'm sure most people out there already said, "Dude, I don't like these names. I want real fighters." Whatever. You can also just rename all these cats, right? Remember, it's the numbers that matter, right? So if you rename them, fine. You can even move them around. I don't care, but you want to pay close attention to the because when you roll that D10, it's supposed to be a factor of the luck of the draw. Sometimes you get an easy fight. Sometimes you might land a guy who really shouldn't be in the starters, right? Okay. Next up is after post 5 fights, you're supposed to start rolling where you get a gig. Okay. You have two choices. You can stay at home. If you stay at home, you're going to have to fight one of your hometown rivals, right? That can get old pretty quick. And imagine this, if you're Central City is your home base, and you're in your 6th fight, you're fighting guys that are all in the 1,000 range. So if you're at home, so imagine what it'd be like to be a young boxer and your home base is Central City or Paradise City. So lucky you roll up Paradise City as your home base. Paradise City is a place you really don't want to be as a boxer, right? Because of the mob, right? So, and you don't want to also have your first fights be 12-round bouts out of the gate. So if your hometown is Grand Bay, all your fights are against tough locals, 12 rounds. So you can choose to go on the road. If you choose to go on the road, you got to roll, right? Now, if you're a manager, you can pick. Managers have the luxury of wheeling and dealing, right? Okay. If you're a boxer, luck of the draw. Okay. So, so the reason I'm talking about this, I want to get to Paradise City. Paradise City is the thing I have not talked about yet. We did see Paradise City come up to this morning in my fights with in my fight night this morning. So I thought it's time to talk about Paradise City. Can be people confused. What's Paradise City? Paradise City is the photograph for my thumbnails for Big Country Boxing. Paradise City is where the film, the setup takes place. He's fighting in Paradise City, and he's of course sold out by his manager. He doesn't know it. He's been sold out to the mob to take a dive, but they don't tell him to take the dive. If you haven't seen the film, it's a genius film. He's kind of a washed up old fighter who's got problems now. He's been knocked out 3 or 4 fights in a row. His girlfriend's begging him to give up the game, but he feels good. He thinks all I need is one big fight. If I can win one big fight, I can open up a store. So this is the setup. Well, his manager and his trainer accept money from the mob for a guaranteed rigged fight, but they don't tell him he has to take a dive. So he goes into that fight not knowing he's supposed to take a dive. So they only tell him in the middle of the fight, you got to go down. Well, he doesn't go down. He fights, he wins, they break his hands. And that's the end of the movie. Paradise City is the reflection of that city. So you can roll, lucky you, Paradise City, you can roll, take a dive. You have a choice, like he did in the movie. Your choice is, I'm not taking the dive, and then you have to roll who you're going to fight, and you still have to conduct the fight. So you can still lose the fight, but if you don't take the dive, and the dive is just going to show up as a loss. It actually can't hurt you. You do not lose the points for taking the dive. So here's the thing. It's a character question, right? I have a young boxer and I'm the manager. I'm going to advise him, take the dive, dude. You're not going to lose any points. You're going to get a loss on your record, but you'll come out of this fight unscathed, outside of whatever you may have lost in training or travel. Okay. So, but if I'm undefeated and I'm 15-0 and I want keep my record unblemished and I land here and I roll take a dive and I'm at 1,200 points, I might eat that 200 points, fight the fight. I could still win or lose the fight, but one thing's for certain: if I win that fight, I'm going to lose 200 at the end. Is they're going to ultimately break my hands. They're going to break a leg or break my hands because I didn't take the dive. Okay, that's something you don't want to hit as a young boxer with 600 points, right? A young boxer, I would gladly take the dive, right? Unless again, I'm 6-0 or 7-0 and I don't want to blemish record. So this is a tough decision. There's also rigged win on here, which means you automatically are guaranteed a KO win. That's it. You don't even fight the fight. You're guaranteed a KO win. You roll to find out which guy you automatically KO. It doesn't matter what round, because they rig it and you don't know it. So your boxer would go out there and they will win that fight by KO because the guy's you're going to clip him with just one good shot and he's going to take a dive and you're going to get the win. The bad part of that is you will get no points for it. So you're going to automatically get the KO win on your record, but you won't get the plus 50 bonus to your rating. So that the rig thing hurts you too, because you get the cheap record and the KO on your record, but you don't get the plus 50 benefit. So Paradise City is a place you would like to not box. So imagine if you roll up your player and this is your hometown. You might want to hit the road even as a young boxer and get the hell out of Paradise City. Or you might want to stay here because there's some bad boxers here. But you might want to stay here and maybe score a couple of rigged wins, get your record padded a little bit. The problem with a padded record, as we all know, what happens when you cheat? You don't actually have the experience that results in you actually being equal to that. So what's the famous sports chant we all hear? Overrated. Tat, 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 tat. Your boxer would go into the next fight 3-0, 2 rigged fights, and he would only maybe be a 615 fighter with some fights under his belt that he didn't get the benefit of. And he would be a lie. He would be he would be empty trunks and empty gloves, so to speak, right? So that is, and that's what I was trying to say. I was telling this to Chris, describing this to Chris the other day in a phone call. We were discussing some things about the boxing scoring table that comes with the game, that this table is not meant to reflect pro boxing. It's meant to reflect big country boxing. It's meant to reflect, it literally is, as I told Dell, when I create a game, Flash Football, Flash Racing, Dark Age of Man, boxing, I create an entire entity. This is the sum total. All of it together makes Dark Age of Man. The country, the lore, the NPCs, the kings, the rules, the everything about this is Dark Age of Man. Everything in total is Dark Age of Man. You can certainly ignore things or cherry pick things or borrow things, but if you're going to play Dark Age of Man, the sum total of everything in this book makes it Dark Age of Man. Well, I'd never create any game where I haven't thought about every part of it. And that is something that I think is one of the reasons why my sports games are particularly difficult for people, some people to enjoy, because I'm not trying to recreate NHL hockey. I'm trying to create a hockey experience that is quite unique, generally fictional, right? And it's designed a particular way. For instance, my Flash hockey is designed where you can't really figure out what makes a team great. I didn't want you to be able to glance and say, oh, dude, +2, +2, +2, +2. Oh, we got a great hockey team. I really didn't want, it's so abstract in my hockey game. I did not want people to be able to know, what is a -2 good or is a -2 bad? Depends. It depends on what random number shows up in the charts. That -2 might be great for some things, bad for other things. So and I think a lot of people don't like that. They want to look and say, oh, the Miami Dolphins do this thing and they're going to do this thing really well, and I'm going to have to do everything I can to stop what they do well. Well, I'm not trying to make a replay game. I'm trying to make a sport experience that's about competition and a single player solo game that is challenging. And it's going to stay challenging when there are random variables I really can't find the pattern on or I really can't control. Okay. So that's the reason many of my games have a random element that you can't really pin down. That's just the way I want to design games for people to play solitaire games, because when we play by ourselves, depending on the intent of the game, when I play alone, I'm probably like in second season, I just want to see two teams matched up in Apple football or two teams. I'm not really playing to win. I'm trying to help either team. I do the best I can to help either team win, but I'm not really trying to win with the team. It's not me versus the Broncos, or it's not my team versus, okay. Well, when I play a solo game, I'm okay with that. But when I design a solo game, I kind of want there to be this sense that I'm trying to achieve something. Some of it I'm going to have some control over it. Some of it's just going to be pure luck of the draw. And I like that. This is the concept of this in particular, by the way, for those who have followed me in the past, greatly influenced by Return of the Heavyweight Champ by Owlsat Games. Return of the Heavyweight Champ is a career boxing game, solo. It comes with a small fast action deck. You create a boxer. Excuse me, you don't create a boxer. I think it gives you 8 contenders, and you have to pick one of the, and 8 contenders all have pros and cons, 8 or 10, and they're all heavyweights. Return of the Heavyweight Champs, what it's called. It's a brilliant game by Owlsat, which is an import from Britain. And there's this little deck of cards, tiny little deck of cards, and you flip that for your fights, and it's weighted against your boxer, right? They don't say that in the rules, but when you sit down and you look at the cards, if you break the cards out and you take a good look at them, it's weighted against your boxer, which makes Return of the Heavyweight Champ very hard. And it took me years to finally win a championship with Return of the Heavyweight Champ. I finally did it a couple years ago. I've got that file out in the very tough. It took hitting everything just right, and I did finally win it. I think my fighter was like 36-8 when I finally won I think I won it at 32-6 or something, and became 36-8 when I finally retired him. But the point I'm trying to make is that game said this, no, you are trying to win it. This is something you're trying to win. You could cheat. Anybody can cheat in a tabletop game, but it's designed that you got to really bust your hump, scratch your head, and then you got to cross your fingers and pray for some luck when you roll the dice and when you flip those fast action cards. Well, I wanted this to have a similar feel. You have only so many choices and so much control. You kind of are a witness to the boxer's life. You're a witness to the world. And the final piece of this, why I did it the way I did it, you are supposed to adjust every opponent's rating after every game. You don't adjust the opponent for their travel and for their training. We don't care. but all of them are going to be affected by their winning or losing the fight against your fighters, which means, because I'm running, for instance, I'm running 2 boxers in this world right now. Enrico, excuse me, Enzio, and McDougal, and I started with Gabriel. Gabriel's already been dumped. I've already replaced Gabriel on a chart, and Terrence Coleman went to the Independent. So Gabriel's still in the game, but I've released him from his contract. I took over Joey McDougal, and I've already had Enzo Giordano fight 9 or 10 fights already, and and Joey McDougal's had 3. But every time Enzo in the same middleweights wrecks one of these guys, right? He's lowering the ratings that are going to affect Joey McDougal. If Joey McDougal starts losing to these guys, or vice versa, when I do matchups for fight cards, they fight each other. These fictional fighters fight each other, and some guys are going to grow into juggernauts. Some guys are going to drop into wastrels. I'll have to retire, get them out of the game, and roll up new guys, right? But there's going to be an ebb and flow of all the boxers around the universe. So by the time I get to the champ, he may have won 3 other fights and actually be that much better. Or the champ might have lost, the guy that was the champ might have lost 2 or 3 fights, and whoever beat him might be climbing in the ranks. So you can see how they're actual. There is no cap on the rating, by the way. This is one of the things Chris and I were talking about. What's the cap? Well, there isn't one. You can have boxers keep winning and grow, because remember, my chart is capped. So at some point, a boxer gets to so many points that he's everybody in the game, he's 1,000 points ahead of. Well, I would retire that guy. He's the greatest boxer of all time. Just retire him, get him out of your game. And this is probably never going to happen the way the charts are built, but it could. It could. Okay. So anyway, I wanted to share this because I think enough people are now buying the game and playing the game and enjoying it and asking questions. And I thought I would talk about some of these things. And for those who are curious, or those who are, still on the fence about whether this would be remotely something they're interested in. Again, I've said this before. We spent 4 years developing this, and I talked about this candidly through development and through the process for years. And when we were proofing the book, I purposely proofed every book live so people knew the quality of what they were going to get if they bought the game. I didn't want anybody to buy this book and be surprised by crap art, crap quality printing, or whatever. That's just me. I don't want anyone to ever be disappointed in whatever money or they spend. So I'm very, very transparent. This is what it is. I'll talk about it. I'll share it, and I'll be the first one to say, this is what it does well. This is what it is designed to do, and I'll be the first one to say, oh no, if you're looking for simulation, you're looking for a boxing simulation, round by round, punch by punch, with real life boxers. Oh, you've got to go with Glory Days Boxing. You've got to go with Legends of Boxing, right? You've got to pick those. If you want career sims in boxing, Legends of Boxing's got an awesome module for that. But my game and in particular, Return of the Heavyweight Champ are special when it comes to, I think, career kind of world, the whole idea of the entire package. Legends of Boxing does this too with regional fights and working your way up to the districts and the regional. So Gary covers a lot of those things really well. But it's longer, right? It's going to be a longer, more it's simulating, actual boxing, right? Okay. And Glory Days of Boxing, title bout, we all know what those are. Those are sims. Those are straight up punch to punch, mano a mano grudge matches, and we're going to see every punch of every round scored, and every cut, and every TKO chance, etc. So I think it's important that we people know what they're getting, right, to some degree, and how it works, and what my thinking process is. I had somebody write me an email yesterday, congratulating me on the release of this, but I had a couple of questions, and I said, well, and so I explained a little bit, but I explained it because I want to share it, and not because I was offended by their email, but because I was defensive. It's like, no, I want people to understand what my thinking process is. Why did I make this version? Why do I think this is fun? Why do I think this is interesting? It's not for everybody, and it may or may not be for everybody, but it's the kind of thing that I dig. And again, I've said this before. I design things for what I want to do and what I want to play. I don't design things to steal market share, right? I'm not in the business of, hey, what's popular? Hey, let's make something to steal some of that market share. That's the difference between independent publishers independent creators and big companies, right? Big companies say, wait, what's popular? Oh, a horror game's popular. All right, let's get our horror game in the roll. Let's get it going. So what? That game sold 10 million units. Okay, let's get our horror game going, because we want to get some of that market share of these people who really want horror games right now. That's obviously not what Gary and myself and Keith and all of us small company guys, we're creating something we want to create, something that we have fun playing, etc. And then you hope other people, you hope it finds a audience or a niche, right? At least I do. And I've said it before, I wrote Dark Age of Man to achieve some things in role playing that other games weren't doing for me. And I had ideas in this about liberating the referee, liberating the GM, and it needed to be defined and it needed to be created so I could teach it, or I could say, try our game where you don't play the traditional referee, the traditional GM. And I wanted it to be couched in one of my favorite time periods, the Dark Ages, and I wanted it to be couched in fantasy. And there's a whole reason why it is a sum total of the whole process. But nothing's by accident at all. And so same thing with this, nothing's by accident. My hockey and flash, and I think my flash hockey game in basketball, definitely, I don't think a lot of people liked them, but that's because there's a level of abstraction there, in that I don't want you to be able to look at a team and know immediately this team's going to be the champs, right? You're meant to play the games, and you're meant to trade players, and you're meant to shuffle players in and out, and you're meant to find out over the course of a season who is the best point guard or who is the best goalie or whatever. We're not trying to make, I'm not trying to recreate the 1962 NHL season or those teams. It's never my intent. Flash racing, all fictional cars, fictional engines, fictional drivers, a small circuit of 12 teams, 24 drivers or 21 drivers, 12 seats or whatever. Open wheel 1960s dangerous racing. And the goal is to find out what cars, what engines, and what drivers match up to be champions. That's the goal of Flash racing, and to get through a fun, exciting race in about 10 turns. It's Flash racing is an 8-turn game. A grid with your 12 or whatever cars it is. I can't remember now. 12 teams, 24 cars, or no, I can't. Oh my God. Holy cow. I'm going to have to get my Flash racing. Yeah. Point is, and you race through a circuit of, I think it's 10 tracks. And at the end of the season, you can have, and then all the drivers are contracted, so you can actually have drivers leave teams and join other cars. So there's chassis, engines, and drivers, and you can put and there's pit crews, right? So you can put a pit crew with a car, with an engine, with a chassis. You really are creating a car and a team, and then you're hitting the track. But much of it is not. There's not a component that lets you go, oh, plus this, plus this, plus this, plus this guarantees victory. It's again abstracted enough that not every situation is predictable, right? So, and it's solitaire, and I do that so there's a challenge in it. There's a challenge if you have a favorite car racer, if you want to make your own car, your own engine, whatever, however you want to compile your team, that you're not guaranteeing yourself victory, so to speak. So, all right, everybody out there, have a wonderful week, and enjoy. Again, we are in the golden age of gaming, man. It's unbelievable. Tabletop gaming. Enjoy it. Love what you do. And I'll check back later. Bye-bye.